Welcome. This is a little bit about Chapter 1, and I'm going to talk about Part 1. One of the things I want you to know is this is kind of an overview of the codes. Well, after you've read, remember I want you to read the chapters, and reading about each code you're going to find out standards and regulations. Keep in mind that not all of them will be enforced by every jurisdiction. Some finishes and sustainability standards are not required by local jurisdictions, but may need to be followed for safety, health, and or liability reasons. So you have to, of course, always get with your jurisdiction. Now, what do we mean by getting with your jurisdiction? If you've read the chapter, that means you're going to have to get with a local inspector, building inspector, to be able to find out. We talked a little bit, or you learned a little bit about the history. But, one of the things I want you to make sure you know, there hasn't always been an international building code. For 50 plus years, there were 3 model codes. And I just want you to understand that, because sometimes you will find in some jurisdictions that they may still have these old, antiquated codes. So be aware of that. The Building Officials Code Administration International, which is the BACA National Building Code, it was basically used in the northern and central area of the United States. The Southern Building Code, Congress International, which is referenced as the SBCCI, it was used, or referred to as the Standard Building Code, and it was used in the southern portion of the United States. And then you had the International Conference of Building Officials, ICBO, which is a uniform building code, and you usually found all those codes on the western part of the United States. But in 1994, above, all those that I've been talking about, the 3 of them, the BACA, the SBCCI, and the ICBO, decided to come together and form an umbrella organization called the International Code Council. So in 2003, the above 3 formally consolidated. In the late 1990s, the National Fire Protection Association created its own set of codes, the NFPA. And you will also hear something a little bit about the life safety codes, which is referenced in the IBC code book. And the life safety codes acronym is LSC. Now, as we talked about, codes have been published, like the NFPA, life safety codes, IBC. They're revised every 3 years, okay? The current editions, 2006, 2009, 2012, 2015. And you may ask, why are we using the 2012? A lot of times you will find jurisdictions, of course, only end up updating after they have seen all the changes. They have to have time to learn about the changes that are in the code. If you looked at the earlier video, you'll understand how you can identify the changes. The Life Safety Code is not a building code. The Life Safety Code concentrates on problems involving the removal or evacuation of all persons from a building. The purpose of the code is to establish minimum requirements that provide a reasonable degree of safety from fire in buildings and structure. So, during this time, we're talking about trying the organization of the IBC code book. The federal government started creating regulations, mainly pertaining to government-built and owned buildings. And in 1973, the Consumer Product Safety Act was formed, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission was formed. This, of course, was formed to be able to assist in making sure that products and things that were created passed certain standards. The resulted, of course, that created new standards writing organizations, so that these different organizations made sure there was a benchmark that when people created products that they went through and they met those standards. As I said, a collection of codes means there's regulations, ordinance, or other statutory requirements. And each jurisdiction decides whether, sorry about that, each jurisdiction decides which codes to adopt and enforce. Once they're adopted and they become law within that jurisdiction. So this allows the municipalities to custom the code by amending sections. So you'll find in certain regions, sometimes they'll go through and not want to follow all aspects of each of the IBC. They may take out or subtract something within that if they feel like it doesn't pertain to them. We talked about the ICC and the NFPA. Those are model code organizations, and they write the codes. And the IBC and the NFPA 5000 are the actual codes, model codes, written by ICC and NFPA. Designers have to contact their local jurisdictions for approval of code publications, which or who are following what. So you can see a little bit, if you look in your textbook on page 16, you will find kind of a figure there. It talks about the ICC codes and the NFPA codes and how and what falls under those jurisdictions. The NFPA kind of broadens their scope a little bit. The NFPA develops standards as well as codes in the Life Safety Code and the NEC, creating collaboration with other industry organizations called the C3 Code, which is a comprehensive consensus of codes. So you're going to kind of learn a little bit about, and I know it's kind of a little confusing at times, but there's a mesh of different organizations that have kind of worked together to be able to create the ICC codes that look with. In addition, the NFPA has partnered with the IAMMO, which is the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials, and with the Western Fire Chiefs Association, and the ASHRA, which is American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning. A lot of times you're going to find that each of these organizations are more of an experts of each area that they govern. And so therefore they're more in tune to know what needs to be changed to make sure that it will best suit the area that you are living in. The I-codes are arranged by chapters and addressing various aspects of a building and include particular requirements for each occupancy or building type. The C3 codes use the manual of style key chapters divided by occupancy type. I know you haven't learned anything about what occupancy type is, but it's the same type, but it's laid out totally different. A few states continue to maintain their own set of codes, which you can read a little bit on page 18 in your textbook. So you might want to highlight that particular area. Plumbing codes. IBC, International Plumbing Codes. As I said, remember, IBC has plumbing codes, mechanical codes, and they're revised every 3 years. You have the IPC, which is International Plumbing Code. You have the IMC, which is the International Mechanical Code. And then you have the electrical codes, which is the National Electrical Code, which is NEC. Now, it's a part of the NFPA, which is the C3 code. Also, there's the energy codes. The United States and all these particular regions are really getting into energy conservation codes, which is IECC. And it was originally based on the Model Energy Code. In 2004, the NFPA created its first energy conservation code, which is the NFPA 900, which a lot of times people refer to as BEC. It outlines the provisions required for administrating and enforcing ASHRA standards. Because ASHRA, we remember, we're talking about all the things that go with refrigeration, air conditioning, all of these things. And they're geared to energy efficiency in commercial buildings. Now, we also have the residential code, which is the International Residential Code, IRC. And it's used for construction of a single family and duplex residence. So if I'm in a particular town, it might say Lufkin, it might say Waco, wherever, parts of Houston, then if you're going to just design different homes, you're not going to really reference the IBC code book. That's used basically for commercial buildings. You're going to turn and you're going to research the IRC, International Residential Code. Didn't ask you to buy that particular book because that's something that we get into when we get into HMS 314. There is also another code called Existing Building Code. And it's used a lot for existing buildings because sometimes you can't go in and do everything that you find in a brand new building. So there is a new IBC code for just existing buildings. And it helps with reasonable upgrades and improvements. And sometimes it's more reasonable than reviewing the IBC code book. So I hope you like this first part. You need to really go through, read, of course, that chapter about the codes and try to have a complete understanding of what you see.